Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining today for UKATA's webinar, Gaza, the latest disaster. My name is Kellyanne Smith, and I'm the Marketing and Events Coordinator here at UKATA, and I'm really excited to be hosting this incredible webinar with Roger. So thank you for your time today, Roger. Just before we begin, just a few housekeeping points. This session is being recorded and I will make it available at the end. So it will be on YouTube. I will send it in an email and you can have access to it through our UKATA website. During the webinar, if you do have any questions, please use the Q&A option, not the chat option. You can submit your questions during the webinar or at the end, and we'll try and get through as many questions as we can. If anyone does experience any technical difficulties, try refreshing Teams, come out, log back in, and it should rectify itself. So let's get started. So a warm welcome, Roger, and over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Kellyanne. Thank you. Good morning, folks. Believe it or not, I've been speaking on around conferences for many, many years. But believe it or not, this is the first webinar I've ever done. So I feel a bit uncomfortable. I like to speak directly to people, look in their eyes and get feedback, you know, and of course I can't see anybody at all. So please forgive me if it's not the usual interaction. I suspect there are some people here today who've known me for a very long time. I know Christiane is out there somewhere, but I'm sure there's people who I've never met and have no idea who I am. So my name is Roger. I don't like all this academic stuff at the front. It's very poserish. So if you have questions, my name's Roger, or my pals call me Rog. I started the first asbestos test house in Scotland, one of the first in the whole of the UK, in 1978. And since then, we've gone on to do some pretty impressive stuff, actually. We do normal fibre identification, fibre counting, surveys, all that sort of routine stuff. But we have done a lot of research work, which has changed UK legislation and, in fact, worldwide legislation as well. In terms of UKATA, I was one of the founder members right from day one. Unfortunately, before I could attend my first ever meeting, I had a stroke. And that put me back by about 2 years. I had to learn to speak again and walk again and all that stuff, you know. But I've been on the board since about year 3, I think it is. We're now into 20-something years, so that's a long time. So I speak regularly on behalf of UKATA at various functions. The last one being the European Asbestos Federation in Brussels in December 2024, when I presented a paper there on Gaza. A joint paper myself, and I did it on behalf of UKATA as well. So I'm really delighted to be asked today to do not quite a repeat performance because I've changed it a little bit. But what I'm going to do this morning is really based on that Brussels presentation, which perhaps I have time to say later on went down very well indeed. Before I start properly, I must make a disclaimer, really. I am not a politician. I have political views, obviously, but they are private. I'm not a politician. I'm not here to blame either side in the conflict. I'm just a humble scientist. That's all I am. I'm here to give you an indication of what's going to happen in Gaza over the next 20, 30 years. That's what I'm going to do. There's a question and answer session towards the end. I will not answer any political questions. I won't do it. I'll answer try and answer whatever technical questions you have, but no political ones. If you want to know my political I can't do that from a UKATA stage. If you want my political feelings, my humanitarian feelings, I will be speaking at the conference the 26th of June, the UKATA conference. So if you come along the night before, there's a nice dinner, and over a few drinks, whatever questions you want to ask, I'll answer them honestly. But for today, I'm on a UKATA platform and I cannot do that. Okay, Gaza, of course, has been destroyed. There are two conflicts. There was one in 2009, and the really disastrous one started in October 2023 and is still going on a daily basis. On the left-hand side, you see Gaza as it was, very densely populated, and a thriving community. And this middle picture and the right-hand picture there is the middle one, the right one, little boy here looking at the wreckage. There is virtually nothing left standing in Gaza. The current conflict started in October 2023. The United Nations were still allowed, were in the country at that time. They have an environmental protection unit. They had folks on the ground there. And before they were thrown out of Gaza, you will know now that the United Nations are not allowed in, or the BBC or anybody else really. So before they were thrown out, they did a very, very quick review and published this preliminary report. Freely available. If you want it, I can give you details later on and you can download it. But from that preliminary report, it was quite scary. There are problems, of course, with water. There's very, very little water there. There's not enough drinking water. There is a real problem with wastewater. There's a shortage of water to drink. So there's certainly no water for toilets, ablutions and showers and baths, things that we take for granted. There's a huge build-up of solid waste, a huge build-up of sewage, from humans there, and there are problems with unexploded armaments in the debris. There's a huge destruction of buildings and infrastructure. The estimate from the United Nations, these are not my figures, you can verify them from the report. The estimate for Gaza alone is 15 million tons of rubble from infrastructure. The United Nations did a report in 2009, and this shortish was not short, but a quick report latterly in 2023. The post-conflict assessment showed buildings in Gaza with roofs and walls, the older buildings, containing cement, mostly asbestos cement, of course, which normally contains chrysotile, but there was some evidence of chrysolite, blue asbestos, in some locations, but no details given. So it's definitely there. In the 2024 assessment, an initial estimate from the United Nations, a rapid analysis of the 8 refugee camps, indicated that some 800,000 tons of debris may be contaminated with asbestos. You'll see in a little minute that the vast majority of that is asbestos cement. So taking the minimum quantity asbestos cement, if we say there were roughly 10% or so of the total sheet, the big sixes, roughly 10% is chrysotile. So this could mean 10% of that, which is 80,000 tons of asbestos fibres, asbestos material in that rubble. So straight away, you can see we have a problem. I did the presentation in December, and there was a lot of research work building up to it, and word got out. And out of the blue, I had a phone call from Al Jazeera to ask my opinions. I had calls from BBC and people like that. I had an awful email from a civil engineer from Gaza who was living and working down south. I live in Scotland, so south of Carlisle is south, but somewhere between Birmingham and Manchester. He was quite distraught. His family still live in Gaza. He managed to escape, and he's working here as a civil engineer, so well-trained, clever guy. I had some nice conversations with him. He must have spoken to his parents, and his father took these photographs from the building that they work in. So the center one, I don't know if you can see my cursor on screen, but the center one is looking down from, I presume, the roof onto some sub-roofs below. This is taken from one of the bedrooms, looking up at the sky, and it's very obviously asbestos cement, very, very obviously. So we've got quite large quantities of asbestos cement, buildings which are flattened. You're going to get the asbestos cement debris in these buildings. What did I say? 80,000 tons of it. I didn't know anything about Gaza till I started my research work back in late summer of last year. It's relatively small. It's only 45 kilometers in length, and it's between 12 and 15 kilometers in width. So it's relatively quite a small area. 45 kilometers is less than the distance from Glasgow to Edinburgh, for example. You can drive that in 45 minutes out with the rush hour, 2 hours in the rush hour. So it's a relatively small space. It contains 2.2, well, it used to contain 2.2 million people. It is one of the highest population densities in the world. And it's now made worse, of course, by people congregating in refugee camps. I think there are still 7 of them. So the sort of heartlands, there's no one there anymore. They're all congregating in these refugee camps. So the odds now are that most of the population are breathing in airborne asbestos fibres. You can't argue with that. So we have a hazard. The next question, of course, is there a risk? Because the risk is a hazard times the exposure, as you all know. Everyone here today knows that. So the hazard is the asbestos, the exposure is the fibres per mil times how many you breathe in, and the risk is of lung cancer or asbestosis or mesothelioma. So is there a risk? And that's a question I asked myself, because I didn't know at that stage. Let me take you back to the Helsinki criteria. I suspect most people on this webinar today will have heard of it before. The Helsinki criteria was the result of a huge conference in Helsinki, of all places, and all the great and the good from right around the world took part in it. So we had the asbestos mining companies, the Capes, the Turner and Newell. We had people from research organisations. We had medical people from top hospitals around the world, and it's locked them away for a few years. I wasn't invited, of course. I was too stupid at that age. But they came up with two things at the end of the day. The best measure of any exposure, not just occupational exposure, the best measure is cumulative exposure. And cumulative exposure is what you breathe in, fibres per mil, times how long you breathe it in for. And they decided to use years as a measurement there. So what we have here is the total fibre load on the lung. So we are concerned with fibres per mil, obviously, but the real measurement is cumulative exposure. And we use that by multiplying fibres per mil by years, and the unit is this rather unwieldy thing. And that to me is just a statement of common sense, that's obvious. What they did, which is rather clever, they looked at past records from the mines. Nothing from South Africa, of course, as you would anticipate. They were British owned and really didn't give a toss about anything. Whereas the Canadians, right from the start, had kept good records. They put samples on the miners' collars, and they send them off to work, so they know what they're exposed to. They know from the work records how long they're exposed for, and they can do a calculation of cumulative exposure. So they've got pretty good records going back for a very long time of cumulative exposures at different parts in the mine. If you're in the blasting zone where they're using dynamite, it's the equivalent of 10 pints of beer. If you're on top of the lift shaft, bringing it up is probably 2 pints of beer. And if you're in the offices, there might be half a pint of beer, and so on. You can see my analogy, just to make it simpler. So they analysed all the cumulative exposure, and they analysed the death rate. And they found that it's not a cut-off, but there's a region where the risk of asbestosis or lung cancer is doubled. And that figure was about 25 fibres per mil times years. So we had this figure of 25. If you are well below 25, it's possible, but unlikely you get one of these two diseases. If you're above this figure, then it's pretty much certain you're going to get one of these diseases. And that's been used very, very extensively in asbestos research work ever since 1997. I do a huge amount of court cases. I've done this week's case is number 842. So I'm used to going to court cases. Could be in the Sheriff's Court in Edinburgh, or it could be the High Court in London, or even the Royal Courts of Justice in London. I've done work in Dublin and in New York as well. So I know that the courts regard this as sound. Some relatively recent work has indicated, we know that mesothelioma occurs at lower lung loading. There's one or two papers which reckon it's about 5 fibre per mil times years. So that's 1/5 of the value for asbestosis or lung cancer. I concentrated on the 25 in this paper because it's accepted by the courts, whereas the value of 5, some people accept it, some people don't. So let's work on the 25. An example here, I'm thinking of an electrician and he's working in a housing association house or a local authority house. There's an AIB wall and the light has broken down, so they phone in to the office. The office will send an electrician out to fix the light. So as part of that, he unscrews the screws, takes them out, drills 2 holes and screws in a new light fitting. If you look up HSE guidance note EH35, you'll find a HSE quota figure of about 2 fibres per mil. So we know when the electrician is drilling a hole in a wall, he's exposed to about 2 fibres per mil. Helsinki, fibres per mil times years equals 25. You rearrange that trivial bit of arithmetic. Years is 25 over fibres per mil. So how long would this lad, or these girls as well now, how long would they have to work to guarantee asbestosis? 25 divided by 2 is 12.5 years. That's all. So this person would have to work 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, 47 weeks of the year for 12.5 years doing that task. Don't do that, of course. You might do it 3 or 4 times a week. But you can see after 12.5 years, there's enough fibres in the lung to generate asbestosis or lung cancer. It won't be it, albeit in 25, 35 years' time. So what we have is a ticking time bomb. And we've had that for quite a long time. You'll be aware of everyone on screen today should be aware of the rapid increase in asbestos deaths. It is poodling along at about 2,000 a year until just before the turn of the century. Professor Pito predicted all of this, of course, back in about 1992, and it really came to pass. Those are figures which UKATA has sent out to everybody. The latest stats from Health and Safety Executive, July of last year. So these are the latest ones. And you can see going up from 2,000 up to a total of about 6,000 deaths per annum, which is almost exactly what Pito predicted. Now, that's unacceptable, of course. Well, here we have a gap, COVID years, and it started to go down about here, and it is going down, and the predictions are it will go down. So what on earth has happened? What have we done to make that decrease? Let's go back just a little bit. As I said, all of this was predicted by Pito. So when the death rate started to increase, we can take someone's death about here. If you die from an asbestos-related disease, then the coroner must become involved, and if it's confirmed, the coroner will convey that information to the Health and Safety Executive. So the HSE at headquarters will know the guy's name, of course. They'll know his age. They'll know his postcode, so we can identify clusters around Britain. And they'll know his job function as well. So we should have had a PSA. We should have had 2,000 deaths. It should have been there. Is up there at about 6,000 deaths. So we've got 4,000 deaths too many. And we know, if I'm at HSE or if I look at publications, we don't get the names, but we will get the job function of all 4,000 people. So now we can make a league table. And what we find first, second, and third in the league table are local authority workers. And I count in that housing associations as well. And that, of course, was due to the huge building explosion after the Second World War. You couldn't get brick, you couldn't get stone, you couldn't get wood, lots of asbestos left over from the war effort. So we built whole houses out of asbestos. And when bricks became available, we started building houses again out of brick or stone, but the soffits would have been asbestos, window ledges, and so on and so on and so on. So straight away, we can see who the problem is with. It's with tradesmen. So there we are. The additional deaths occur not in the conventional group up until 1960, 1970, which was heavy engineering and shipbuilding particularly. And here in Scotland, we had the biggest shipyards in the world. We now, 40, 50 years later, have the highest incidence of asbestos-related disease by postcode of anywhere in the world. It's come and it's gone. We don't have shipyards anymore. The deaths now are in tradesmen, electricians, plumbers, carpenters. And the largest single group is tradesmen working for local authorities. How does this work? I came up with, I know people on screen today have seen this, Christian, you've even spoken to it. But I was thinking one day, and I came up with this simple little diagram. Until fairly recently, my wife was a primary school teacher. So she goes into school, 30 horrible little kids, 3, 4, 5 years of age, and almost uncontrollable. But she was good, and she'd calm them down. So she's all ready to go. It's 9:05, and the lights fail. I live in Glasgow, for God's sake. It's dark for most of the year. So the lights fail, uproar in class. Kids, 3, 4 years of age, she's not allowed to leave the room. So what does she do? She opens the door, bellows down the corridor, "Janitor, janitor, please help." And the janitor runs out, "What's the matter, Leslie? My lights are not working." So the janitor goes back to his little office. He phones up technical services. Our local authorities, Renfrewshire Council. And he phones up, he says, "I'm the janitor at Williamsborough Primary School in Paisley." And the clerk at technical services, "Tell me what's wrong." So janitor explains, "Lights are not working." Okay, puts the phone down, tap, tap, tap in the computer, generates a job sheet 5 or 6 miles away down in the depot. Supervisor goes over, rips off the sheet. Jimmy, electrician, Jimmy, or maybe Janet now as well. Jimmy and Janet, electricians, go along to Williamsborough Primary School in Paisley, please. Go along to room 3 and fix the lights. Yeah, okay, Rog, I'll go straight away. I'm not busy at all this morning. I'll go straight away. And the lad's just about got his kit and his bags and everything else, just about to leave the room. You call him back, "Jimmy, don't forget, when you get there, collect a little packet of mesothelioma, will you please?" Because what does he find? When he gets there, the lights have gone down, he's got to take down light fittings, and the ceiling is entirely composed of AIB. You do that once or twice in your lifetime, it's not a problem. Up until, if you do it 3, 4 times a week, you start at 15 years of age as a young electrician. By the time you've been there 20 years, you're only 35, that's all. And you've gone round this loop 3 times a week for 48 weeks of the year for 30 years. You are a mesothelioma candidate. Once you see my mesothelioma cycle, it is very obvious how the disease is generated. Very obvious. And it's very obvious how to prevent it. What if we had carried out an asbestos survey of the school? What if the survey was held up here in technical services? Exactly the same scenario. Janitor phones in, blah, 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 blah. Okay, thank you, phone down. And this time, the clerk interrogates the asbestos register over here. Comes back, no asbestos. Great. Press a button, job sheet's generated, electrician gets it, fixes the lights. There is no mesothelioma. Sorry about that. There is no mesothelioma because there's no asbestos there. Or alternatively, interrogate the register up here. Asbestos there. You do not raise that job sheet and send out an untrained electrician to his certain death, albeit in 30 years' time. You now send a job sheet to a trained electrician who's been on a UKATA Cat A, Cat B course. So he goes out, safe working conditions, there is no mesothelioma. And that, of course, is the whole principle of Regulation 4. Regulation 4 is responsible for this decrease. There's a latent period, of course, anywhere from 15 years for mesothelioma up to 50 years. But typically for lung cancers and asbestosis, it's about 10 to 20 years or so. So if the regs kick in when they did over here, you add on about 10 or 15 years and you see the death rate come down. And that's exactly what we are seeing. So this decrease is a direct consequence of the foresightedness of Professor Pito in the 1990s. And that caused a huge fuss, of course, and even politicians got on board, and what do they know? So there's the background. The key is the Helsinki criteria. Fibres per mil times hours must be less than 25. Let's have a look. Up until Gaza, there is no information from Gaza. We can't get in. They don't allow in United Nations. They don't allow in food convoys. They're certainly not going to let me in to take airborne fibres. We did the Twin Towers, of course. The disaster was 9th of November 2001. We actually did a fair bit of work in the Twin Towers about 10 years before that. The Twin Towers were unusual. Normally, towers that big, they're just concrete boxes put on top of each other, you know. That was built as a steel skeleton, the same as the Red Road Flats in Glasgow, once the tallest flats in the world. So you had this steel skeleton, and to prevent the steel warping in a fire and the stairs fall out, to prevent that, it was sprayed with limpid asbestos, about 2.5 centimeters thick. So we've got these 110 story towers with the steel skeleton all sprayed with limpid asbestos. And I'm sure you can all remember, everyone remembers where they were that day. I know exactly where I was. I'd been to a meeting in Glasgow. I was driving my car on the M8, and there's a news flash, a plane had gone into a tower. So sort of a Cessna or something, you know, someone learning to fly. And then a few minutes later, a second plane had gone in, so clearly there was something badly wrong. So I rushed home and I put the telly on, as we all did. So on the far left here, we see the large jet. Just before impact, we see the jet tearing through the building here, and we see the effect of that. People thought that was concrete dust. When I saw these photographs, I phoned my daughter Emma, who you know works in the company, and I said, "Have you seen those things?" Yes. And on the news, of course, it was, "Oh, there's concrete dust," you know, and I knew that was not concrete dust. A little bit of it was. It was primarily asbestos. This is an absolutely striking figure, of course, the lady just coming out of the World Trade Center, people walking down the street, and I hope you can see on your screen all the asbestos in the air here. And here you see the poor people walking through Lower Manhattan. Now, way before this, we did a job at Glasgow Airport. And if you know Glasgow Airport, where you check, counters you check in at now, if you look up, there's a barrel vaulted ceiling. Now, originally, that ceiling was outside and it sheltered a taxi rank. decided to double the floor area of Glasgow Airport. So they had to strip all the limpet asbestos off the ceiling before they could expand the airport. And we had the job in those days of trying to monitor airborne concentrations. All we could see, of course, inside the enclosures was the arc lights and very, very shadowy figures walking around. And they were scraping it off, of course. And we measured over 1,000 fibres per mil on that job, regularly over 1,000 fibres per mil. But we're not scraping limpet off steel, we've blown it up with huge explosions, as you saw. So I've guessed at about the exposure about 1,500 fibres per mil. So that's the challenge concentration. We know now, of course, consequences. There were 2,996 people killed in the attacks. The US Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, very prestigious organization until Trump got his hands on it. They set up a World Trade Center health program to monitor diseases. The people working there exposed there. And over 125,000 survivors and first responders have long-term effects, mostly due to inhalation of asbestos fibres. And I haven't got 2024 figures, but by 2023, over 5,700 people had died as a consequence of exposure in those explosions. So about 3,000 killed in the actual explosions themselves, and that's counting the terrorists as well, whereas about 5,700 died as a consequence. And that's very, very concerning indeed. If you look around, there's very little information worldwide on diseases in first responders. Very, very little. We've just finished a series of experiments with with Scottish Fire and Rescue Service, and we set houses on fire, and with asbestos in them, and we monitored what's in the air. And if you're interested, I'll be talking about that on the 27th of June at the conference. Let's make some comparisons. World Trade Center, we know there's 1.8 million tons of material. We know the fibres released were approximately 2,000 tons. The people exposed, it was Lower Manhattan, between 410 and 500,000 people exposed. What have we got in Gaza? Best United Nations guess is about 15.3 million tons. Best guess so far is 80,000 tons. People exposed anywhere up to 2.2 million. I said between 1 and 2 million. So you can see that Gaza straight away has, this is whatever it is, 7 times, 8 times bigger. This is 4 times bigger, and this is 4 times bigger as well. So you'd expect the consequences in Gaza to be far worse, would you not? The Twin Towers, as I said, we measured that at about 1,000 fibres per mil. This was a massive explosion, as you saw on telly, so I've estimated perhaps as high as 1,500 fibres per mil. So Helsinki, how long do you have to be exposed? Years is 25 divided by 1,500, and that's 6 days. 6 days. If you're in there any longer than 6 days, you are more or less guaranteed asbestosis, lung cancer, or mesothelioma. That's exactly what we see. If you watched the next couple of weeks on telly, you saw the first responders in particular. You saw them in huge American fire trucks racing from all over New York, racing into the building to try and help people, try and save them, try and get them out. You saw them working away for perhaps 10 hours a day, sleep in the truck and go back in the next day. That's 6 8-hour days. That's 48 hours. That's all you need. For the first responders, that's less than 4 days. So pretty obviously, there's going to be a large number of deaths. And I said to my daughter at the time, we were watching telly, well, she was down in Chepstow, I might be here in Glasgow, we phoned you, and I said, oh, those poor, poor people, poor people. And that, of course, has come to pass. So let's apply the same methodology to Gaza. They're all estimates, you know. I'm giving a ballpark picture. The same all material is asbestos cement, not asbestos insulation. So that's not the best case, it's the least worst case scenario. Exposure from disturbed asbestos is about 10% of that from limpid asbestos. So I'm guessing it's around 150 fibres per mil. Fibres years is 25 over fibre level, 25 over 150 is 62 days. So if you're in there longer than 62 days, breathing in all those fibres, there's a very, very high chance of death from asbestos-related disease. And do remember, the figure for mesothelioma was 5, not 25. So for mesothelioma, that's about 11 days, it's all 12 days. The bombing started in October 2000, the current round of bombing started October 2023, it still hasn't ceased. And from October, I think it was the 3rd, I can't remember, I have to look at my notes. I'm preparing this slide, I've updated from Brussels, and from the first day of bombing to today is 558 days. You only need 62 days, that's all. Clearly, this is appalling, clearly. The other thing that concerned me, not just total numbers, was the type of the refugee. I've been stunned by the sheer numbers of small children there. And I started to worry about those, when I was preparing the Brussels thing, Very large numbers of refugees are children, small children. Dol and Pito, who've done most of the research, asbestos research work for the last 20, well, more than that, 40, 50 years probably. Fantastic people. If you've not read who they are, then I strongly recommend getting a final report to the advisory committee, volume 1, volume 2, back in, I don't know, 1960 or something, years ago. Great reading, great reading. I admire these people so much. They published a paper linking the development of disease with the time from exposure to where the person is now. It's a bit of a complicated little equation. If I try and arrange something up here. The incidence of disease, let's call it L, at any time t, is linked to this equation, described by this equation. K is a constant, which is determined by site conditions, blah, 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 blah. And the time since the first exposure to now, all to the power 4. So if we take an adult born in 1994, when I did the calculation, that person would have been age 30. So at the age of 50, he was exposed at the age of 30. By the time he gets to 50, the probability of death is 2044 minus that to the power 4, which is K times 0.16 million. I don't know what Q is. I can do the same calculation for a child of 2 years of age, these kids in these photographs. If they get to 50, and most of them won't, of course, because of current awful conditions, the first exposure was 2024. The child now is an adult of 50. So I've got 74 minus 24, 50 to the power 4, which is 6.25 million. So comparing that one to that one, L is 6.25 times the constant. L is 0.16 times the constant. The constant is the same. It's the same site. So the probability of death for the child is 39 times higher than that for the adult. They both exposed at exactly the same time. And that's very sobering, it's not? Very, very, very sobering indeed. So we are looking at a nightmare scenario. Look at this little kid. I'm guessing he's about 12, something like that. Look at him. Looking at basically asbestos-filled rubble. So we have a nightmare scenario, far, far worse than the Twin Towers. 4 times as many people, 4 times higher concentrations, and most people don't even know that it's happened. People were shocked in Brussels when I gave this, a room full of people. There was a tea break shortly afterwards. I don't know how many people came up to me to say how shocked they were, didn't know anything about it. And since then, I don't know how many emails I've had from absolutely all over the world with, well, you'll see in a minute. So we have a huge, huge problem. What can we do? Well, when I was naive back in Brussels, there's a rapid damage and needs assessment already on the planning books, jointly carried out by United Nations, the Environment Programme, and the World Bank and the European Union. So it is on the stocks, it's ready to run. Since then, of course, no one's allowed in. Since then, Trump has stuck his big clod-oblong feet into it, and he's going to make it a holiday resort and things like that. But going back to these, we have, in theory, we have a possibility of help. But these people are not hands-on asbestos people, as I am, and most people in the audience today. These people don't have practical backgrounds. They're committee people, really. Most people I spoke to at the conference in Brussels were the complete opposite, and I'm hoping people today are the complete opposite. So some of us have direct experience moving large amounts of contaminated land. We were involved in writing the rules, actually, in the United Kingdom. We looked after the first big asbestos land remediation in the world, and that was at the top secret nuclear submarine base in Faslane. And we followed that by a huge hospital which was built in Clydebank on the biggest asbestos tip in Europe. So we know a lot about it, thanks. And today's rules are based on our early research work. So we have a lot of experience. There's a lot of experience in the USA and in New Zealand, where we've had earthquakes and similar damage to Gaza. So I made a plea when I was in Brussels. What can we do? I chatted with Craig quite a lot over this problem, and Craig and his board are happy to commit UKATA to doing something, whatever we can do. The European Asbestos Forum has said they would be happy to try and put together a working group which should develop protocol to assist the United Nations and the World Bank and the European Union and any other bodies. I make a plea this morning because this is inhuman, absolutely inhuman. I make a plea this morning, if you think you can help, get in touch, either with me or with Craig. If you have knowledge and you have experience, please help me fulfill this vision. That's my contact. If you want to contact me by email, that's the link there. If you want to write, I know I had a letter for years. It'd be nice to have a letter. That's our address, which will all be on the recording when you get it. We have a huge problem. We have people who don't care on both sides of the conflict. They don't care. We have politicians who don't know. I was delighted to see an article on the electronic BBC yesterday on exactly what I'm talking about today. I don't know if it's coincidence. I suspect not. I know Craig issued an instruction to have that sent out on the UKATA LinkedIn page. It's well worth a read. Doesn't go into details I've done, but it's in there. The problem is 2.2 million people, a large proportion of them children. The world is ignoring them completely. We have idiots like Trump, who's going to make a great big Disney World out of Gaza so people can go there for holidays. Yeah, send the rich people there, kill them with a mesothelioma. They don't care. But I do care about the people who are there at the moment. The best this little kid can hope for is a little bit of hope. The worst, there's no hope of survival at all. None. I'll leave you with that thought. So that's me done. It's not a nice morning. It's pretty harsh. Please help. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Roger. Fantastic webinar. I think it's a very powerful webinar and very sobering. So we do appreciate you taking your time out and sharing all that information with us. You did mention in one of your slides all your details, Roger. If it's okay with you, I might implement that on our emails that I'm going to send out. Is that okay?
By all means, that's the email address. Everyone here, it's first name, Roger or Emma at acsrisk.com. And then there's telephone numbers, fax, general information, or it's all on there. And that's our website as well.
Yeah, I'll include all that information, Roger.
Great, thank you very much.
In regards to this webinar, if you want to continue the conversation, like you say, we can also continue that on our social media platforms, Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, etc. Give us a tag in, and then we can, like I say, continue the conversation. Looking at the Q&A, Roger, there isn't any questions as of yet. If anyone does leave this webinar and wish they asked a question or a question come as the webinar ended, again, just email us. I'll pass that on to you, Roger, and I'm sure you'll be more than happy to answer any questions.
Yeah.
Let's have a look. Oh, Craig has put a question in, Roger. Shall we go for it?
Okay.
Let's go. So Craig would like to know, what would be the first 3 immediate steps you would recommend for on-the-ground team starting work in Gaza to reduce asbestos exposure as fast as possible?
It's an impossible question to answer. It's an impossible task to do under the current political regime. The entry into Glasgow is controlled by one side in the conflict. They're not allowing anybody in. They don't even allow in United Nations food trucks and water trucks. So there is no way at the moment of getting in. It's a huge political problem, of course. Trump has washed his hands of it completely. Was the most powerful man in the world, no longer. Was the most powerful nation in the world, arguably no longer. And it certainly won't be in 6 months or 12 months' time. So somehow we have to get this message across to politicians. Now we are looking at huge numbers of deaths, huge numbers. So we have to get the message across to politicians. They can start speaking to each other on an international basis and get some sort of help in there. The United Nations, I do know, have a group of people who could go in at relatively short notice and identify where the hotspots are. And then after that, it's up to basically people like us to go in and assist with getting the stuff out safely. It can be done. You look at the World Trade Center, there's beautiful buildings on the site just now. So it certainly can be done, and people have experience of that. But first of all, people have to be allowed in. They have to assess the situation. And then once we've assessed the situation, the World Bank have committed money to it, to solving it. The European Union making sounds at the moment, but that's all. It really needs politicians to drive it. I made a similar request in Brussels, and I've had quite a lot of emails from some quite powerful people as well. Arguably the most powerful was the chairman of a very large American law firm based in Texas. And he and some of his team spoke at the conference in Brussels. They were very impressive. And we've been in touch. He wants to help. He doesn't know how to do it. So we had a few exchanges, someone in Australia, someone in Canada, someone in South America, and all offering to help. But what can we do? So I've got a call to Texas early next week. What I'm going to suggest, this guy's a huge firm, and they do a lot of pro bono work, of course, and he knows a lot of other firms in America and here in Europe who do the same thing. and I know quite a few law firms as well who do it. So what I'm going to suggest to him is that if we can raise enough money, we could hire a relatively young law graduate, train him in asbestos things and so on, and we can set this guy loose and try and get into Congress and try and get into Westminster and places like that, with an awareness raising program. Because I can't think, we can't just turn up and do things. We can't do that, the problem's too big and they wouldn't let us in anyway. So that was my only idea, to be honest. So I thought I hit a brick wall until I came up with that. So I'm going to speak to him next week and see what he says.
Thanks, Roger. And we are getting some questions in now. We have another question from Nikki. Nikki would like to know, when you ask for help, what help do you need specifically?
Well, that depends on the answer to the first question. It all depends. We have to get access. This has to be done on a grand scale. So the United Nations must get involved somehow. The World Bank, a lot easier to get those on board. It's just money. They got a lot of money. And then we could come up with a plan. Once we know where the hotspots are, what do we do? How do we get rid of the asbestos? We know how to get rid of asbestos in Britain. So there would be huge training programs required, a lot of capital expenditure on vehicles, huge training programs. UKATA could have a very important, and members could have a very important part to play here in terms of training staff, starting with asbestos awareness, then going into minor works, and then going into major works, because there are no skills over there, none whatsoever. So there's a huge opportunity for training for all our members, really, if they are interested, and if they are able.
Thank you.
Sorry, it's not much of an answer, but it's such an awful situation,
Yeah, definitely.
And I'd be really pleased if people could make suggestions. I really, really would.
Well, hopefully something will get generated from this webinar. Like I say, we're going to share this, so hopefully it will get out there. We have another question, Roger. Have we got time for another question?
Yes, of course.
Amazing. So this is from Kerry. If most asbestos in Gaza is asbestos cement, what is more likely to contain chrysotile, which is factored into your calculations for meso?
Agree completely. There's a much, much greater problem with chrysotile, for example, as everybody knows, and chrysotile is the least problematic. What I've done in the calculations, the age, there's no difference. It's all for chrysotile. I haven't put any figures at all. I've not predicted number of deaths, but I can't do it. You need a first-rate mathematician to do that, and I'm a second-rate mathematician. First-rate physicist, but a second-rate mathematician, so I can't do that. I'd be delighted to sit down with someone, proper mathematician, and try and work our way through it. But I've deliberately not quoted any figures. But common sense tells you it's going to be a huge increase on the World Trade Center. Huge increase. Because you've got so many more people, so many more higher numbers, all that sort of stuff. And the time it's gone on for. Sorry, I can't be more specific than that. I'm sorry.
No, thanks, Roger. We appreciate your honesty. I've said thank you. She's found this interesting, but also very sad. Yvonne, as I said, good morning to us both and wished us luck. Thanks, Yvonne. And Liam said hello this morning.
Hello, Liam.
Just let me
hope your new job is going well.
Okay. So thank you, Roger. So if there's any more questions, I will send them to you by email and get a response to the questions. You mentioned that you are speaking at our conference in June. Very exciting.
Yeah.
Looking forward to that. And everyone that's joined the webinar today.
Can I just say a little bit of a taster for that?
Absolutely.
People who know me well know my brain doesn't work like normal, and I do very odd things. Gaza is one of them, you know. But we actually burnt down 2 houses in conjunction with the fire service, the HSE, and Glasgow City Council. It took 2 years to set up the experiment. There's no information available on first responders, and you can't just turn up on a site to measure it, you know. So it took us 2 years to find, first of all, Glasgow City Council found us a site which was safe to burn down. We spent a long time planning the experiment. We tried to involve HSE, they weren't too interested. And then we actually burnt down 2 houses and monitored airborne concentrations.
As you do. Wow.
So I think that'll be pretty interesting and a lot more fun than we've had today.
Yeah, well, it's always fun with you, Roger. Always so insightful. But yeah, so on that note, if you do want to hear more from Roger, as we've discussed, he will be speaking. Everyone today does qualify for a discount for tickets at the conference. I will pop that discount code on the email. And that's it, Roger. Thank you so much.
Oh, it's been a pleasure. I'm just sorry I can't see people, you know, and can't interact. But it's been a pleasure. I hope people found it interesting.
Absolutely.
Sad, but interesting.
Too true. Well, thanks again, everyone, for joining.
Okay. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks again to you,
Thanks for
Roger.
coming. Pleasure.
Take care then. Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye, everybody.